Hey folks, Lenny Lawson here, the Car Guru. I don't know if you've noticed it or not, but I have been in absentia, and I apologize. On the radio show, I have to run reruns, and I've got my regular listeners, they say, out of town, huh? You know, they give me a hard time. Yeah, my wife and I went on a cruise. It was a Western Gulf of America cruise. Have they changed the name of that yet? Or is it still Gulf of Mexico? I don't know. He's probably signing that today or maybe yesterday. But anyway, we were in that Gulf, whatever it's called. We left out of Nolens, that's New Orleans. That was interesting in and of itself. We arrived a day early and went downtown. We were just a block and a half away from Bourbon Street, and there were memorials all over that end. We were actually on the end where the terrorist activity took place, and those 14 or 15 people lost their lives. And that was very sobering to see that and be there. But we had a nice little stay at the JW Marriott, and then we boarded our, what was the cruise line? Norwegian Cruise Lines. And it was very nice, 3,500 passengers, 12 or 1,800 crew. Pretty big ship, not the biggest. We saw one of the biggest ships. It holds 7,000 passengers, if you can imagine, 2,500 or 3,000 crew, and we parked beside it, and I thought our ship was big. That one was really big. Do you notice I'm a little hoarse? You know, I come back in this cold weather, and all of a sudden my throat goes and just compresses. I felt fine the whole time. As soon as I get back into the cold weather, this starts. So, like I say, Western Caribbean, if you call it that, we went to Belize. Roatan, I think is how you say it. It's an island off the coast. That was pretty cool, off the coast of Honduras. And then some kind of a private island that Norwegian owns in cooperation with another government down there. And then, let's see, Cozumel was the final stop. You know, all of them have something in common. A lot of poverty. A lot of T-shirts, a lot of jewelry, a lot of liquor, a lot of liquor stores down there, duty-free stuff. But yeah, and a lot of decent food. I mean, I'm just not gonna go overboard with the cruise food. I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, it was about a 7, with occasional burst up to maybe 8.5. The trip back was a -7, maybe a -10. We got to the airport. Our flight was supposed to leave out of New Orleans at 1:30. It left at 9:30 that evening. Yeah. Long time to spend. I know many of you have spent longer time than that in a airport. But I kept my cool. I just decided, Tara and I looked at each other and said, you know, we enjoy being together. This place is full of food, stuff to read. Let's just make the best of it. We did. So finally, after about 4 hours of waiting, somebody from American Airlines finally said, okay, this is what's going on. We got a mechanical problem, and the parts are on the way, and we're going to fix it, and we'll keep you informed. They didn't. They didn't keep us informed. It was awful. And some of the people just really getting wound up about it. And then they finally brought this plane around, and it was sitting out on the tarmac, and everybody was just sure that was our plane. The conversations were exhausting, just the passengers. But finally, the pilots showed up, and then everybody started harassing them. I mean, it was we just sat there and just watched it all. And we finally got to board the airplane, but we had to take off, or we had to actually close the doors on the plane by 9:15, or the crew would time out. And so they waived all of the stuff that you normally have to do, where they call them by groups and so forth. No, they just said, come on, people. And everybody piled up against the door. Tara and I just kind of meandered up there because we had our seat assignments. I didn't see any sense in, making it a competition to see who got on there first. We all got on the airplane. They closed the doors with 3 minutes to spare. So we flew to Charlotte, landed, had to get a hotel, and fly on in yesterday morning. So we're here. I'm here, and I hope you're glad. The communication thing, that's kind of what I want to talk a little bit about, and how in business there's certain things that you have to do. You have to communicate, and not only with your customers. I'll be back here in just a minute. Okay, I am back. Occasionally we'll have somebody come to the dealership, and probably more than just to somebody. There might be 4 or 5 people that way. They're in the dealership for a reason, to get their car serviced, and something's wrong with it. It goes a little bit long. What happens? What should happen? When you go to any business and you're waiting on something, you're waiting for them to ship you something. It's really different now that Amazon's around, because you can track packages. You order something, and then many times the next day it shows up, and you say, "How did this happen? This is impossible." But it does happen. But then something doesn't show up, and you want to be able to track it. You want to see what's going on, and you can do that. It's one of the advances of technology. But, when you're a small business or a mid-sized business, especially in retail, and somebody's in your waiting room, you got to keep them up to date. You got to tell them what's going on, and you need to do it frequently and thoroughly. Now, one of the things that a lot of businesses don't understand, and sometimes my people may not understand it as well as they should, is that, when good things happen at Amazon, you can track your package. It comes really quickly. If it doesn't come quickly, maybe you get an email and they tell you what's going on. It's keeping you informed. A lot of businesses just don't do that. They don't understand that they are competing with those experiences. No, I don't compete with Amazon, although Amazon is working with Hyundai now to sell vehicles through Amazon. It still has to go through a dealership, but the dealership gets the customer through Amazon. And they have some type of pricing structure, I'm sure. They cannot fix prices. The federal government frowns on that. Price fixing is anti-competitive. So, there is some type of an arrangement. We used to have an arrangement with Sam's Club, and I know there's many dealers that work through Costco or Sam's Club, and the customers feel like, they're streamlining the buying process. But that still, a lot of it gets down to, the communication thing and perception. If you buy something from Sam's Club, don't you think you're paying a discounted price? Well, in fact, you may not be. Especially, maybe you are as far as salmon and chicken nuggets, but in terms of automobiles, Sam's Club doesn't sell cars. Costco doesn't sell cars. Amazon doesn't sell cars. In most states, only new car dealers who have a franchise can sell vehicles. Now, there's a couple companies that are trying to get around that. One already did, Tesla. They're a direct-to-consumer manufacturer. And a lot of people think that's a great way to buy vehicles. But what they don't think about is the fact that dealers compete against each other for the customer's business. When you have competition, what happens to prices? They go down. Now, unfortunately, for many people, they don't like the process of buying a car because it is a negotiated process. And over the years, and this has been going on for decades, with the exception of pandemics and wars and certain shortages of certain products, just about everything is negotiable. If you go to buy a Toyota Camry, if you shop around at 5 different dealers, you're going to get 5 different prices. But if you go to the Tesla website and order a Tesla Model 3, you're going to pay whatever they have listed on the price. There is no negotiation. There's nobody you can negotiate with. Now, they're offering some really serious deals right now on electric vehicles. Tesla Model Y, I think, is the best-selling vehicle in the country. People are paying full MSRP for it. Yes, they're getting a $7,500 tax credit from the federal government up to a point, but that's all going to stop under the Trump administration. It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, because when demand is artificially enhanced with incentives, you really don't know what's going on. So when they pull the incentives, the truth will come out. And the truth about EVs is coming out, or has been coming out for some time. But the problem is that the dealer model is just not well communicated. And a lot of people resent the heck out of it, including me. I mean, it would be a whole lot easier if we just able to put prices on the cars out there, just like Tesla does, sell everything at MSRP, and customers wouldn't have to negotiate. And we would still have to take trade-ins. There would still be some level of negotiation. Would you like that? Is that a more equitable thing? Would you feel less stress if you knew that everybody paid the same price? Well, I hate to tell you this, but they've tried it. New car dealers are a very inventive bunch of people. And when they started hearing about 20 years ago that if they would just make the buying process easier and give everybody one price, then things would work a lot better. Customers would feel more comfortable. Dealers would be maybe more profitable. But there were a bunch of dealers that tried this one price model, and they got destroyed. Because all that the other dealers had to do, like if you had one dealer in Omaha that was a one price dealer, and then 20 miles down the road is another dealer that's not, then human nature as a customer would be, honey, we got that one price. I wonder if some other dealer would beat that. That's what happens. And that other dealer beats it by $100 to $500, and the customer buys from them. And the one price dealer suffers because they're trying to make it easier on the consumer. You just can't defeat the law of supply and demand. That's one of the first things I learned at UT. I went to Dr. Spiva's class as a freshman at University of Tennessee, and it was just basic fundamental economics. And the first thing he taught us was the law of supply and demand. When demand is high and the supply is low, then prices go up. When the supply is really high and demand is low, then you have the opposite effect. That's what's happening with Toyota right now. The demand is high for hybrids, and people are paying MSRP or really thousands over MSRP just to have the privilege to buy a hybrid. When if they bought the exact same vehicle without the hybrid powertrain, they could probably save $4,000 or $5,000, enough gas to pay for 10 years worth of gasoline. The difference in what they would spend versus what they would save buying the hybrid. It makes no sense when they do the math. But so much of what people do, their buying habits, the things that they think about when they're buying a vehicle. The idea of something sounds like, that I need to buy a hybrid to get great mileage. Yeah, but how much more mileage are you going to get at what cost? So it's kind of like a panic buying situation. Oh, I just got to have one of them. And we're seeing that play out in the reverse right now. People who paid out the nose for stuff because they just had to have it. When the supply was very low and the demand was really high, they were paying out the nose for these vehicles, just all different types of vehicles. I mean, it just pretty much didn't matter. We were coming out of the pandemic. People said, okay, I've held off long enough. And now it's been a couple years, and they're wanting to trade those vehicles in, and they can't. It's because the market on used vehicles has settled down significantly, and so people are coming in to try to trade vehicles, and they financed them for 72 months, 84 months, and they financed way over book value, 130% of MSRP in some cases, and they're anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 upside down. I watch this YouTube channel of this exotic car dealer. He's a used car dealer in Atlanta, and he buys cars from people and turns around and resells them. Sometimes he takes trade-ins, but most of his business is just buying stuff that other dealers can't afford to buy, like exotic Ferraris and Lamborghinis and Porsches and stuff like that. Well, it shows him speaking on the phone to a gentleman who had purchased a Ferrari in 2023, and he paid, I think it was $700,000 for the vehicle, which was like $150,000 over MSRP for that particular car, if you can imagine. Well, he was wanting to trade it, and his payment on that vehicle was $12,500 a month. He had some serious cash flow, but it was getting to him. One of his businesses had failed. He wasn't doing generating the income that he was used to, and so he had to get rid of the car, and he was wanting to trade it for a Corvette. Well, the dealer that he was talking to said, "Well, sir, based on the book value, you have about $300,000 in negative equity." In other words, if he were to sell the car to this dealer, he would still have $300,000 that he would have to pay off somehow. Well, of course, he can't do that. It's not at that extreme with everyday cars like Hyundais and Kias and Hondas and stuff, but as a percentage of the selling price, it's just about as serious. I mean, it'd be tough for the average consumer to just sell a vehicle to somebody that they owe $10,000 more on than it's worth. What do they do with the $10,000? Charge it on a credit card? With interest rates as high as they are, they can't do that either. And see, all of this gets back to what I was talking about earlier about communication. It's also, about trust. And are the people that you're interacting with people that you can trust, that you have confidence in, that they recognize what your typical trading cycle is? Like if you like to trade every 3 years, are they going to put you in a 60-month lease or even a 48-month lease? Or are they going to finance you for 84 months with nothing down? I mean, do you want a car dealer or a car salesperson or even somebody like me? I mean, as a dealer, not as a car guru, but as a dealer. Are you going to come in, if you've never met me, and trust me then when I tell you, this isn't really what you need to do. You need to do this instead. It really is hard to talk yourself out of business. I mean, somebody comes in and they're really wanting to buy something. They're determined. And if you don't trade with them, they're going to trade somewhere else. And, when you structure the deal, they're going to be in bad shape in about a year or two if they try to trade again. And they insist on it. What do you do? No, I'm not going to sell you this car. That would not be the right thing for me to do. Is that what I'm supposed to do as a businessman? It's the same thing happens, though. You may be saying yes, but what if somebody goes to Bass Pro Shops and buys a boat? I mean, you know how boats depreciate. Campers are the same thing. I mean, you go buy a Forest River 34-foot travel trailer, and you pay $48,000 for it. You'll be lucky if it's worth $20,000 in 2 years. There was a time during the pandemic, the pandemic screwed up a lot of things, that, people were paying way over MSRP for campers. And those things, I mean, the bottom has fallen out of that market. So what do you do? What's the Bass Pro salesperson going to say? Well, when you buy that float boat, pontoon boat, it's going to depreciate by 70% in 2 years. Are you sure you ought to do this? I mean, is that their job to talk you out of making a bad decision? No, it's not their job. That's your job. That's your job to have a financial guru that you can talk to. My daughter asked me, I said, "Dad, when do I need to get a financial planner?" I said, 5 years ago. It's never too soon to get a financial planner, folks. If you're young, you're listening to this, you've got $5,000 in the bank maybe, you've got some credit card debt, you owe for 2 vehicles, you can barely make your mortgage payment every month. You're not the kind of person that says, I don't need a financial planner. Yes, you do. You need one more than just about anybody else. You can talk to, you could go listen to Dave Ramsey or buy one of his books and follow that plan. Or you can actually sign up for somebody like I did 20 years ago. And I signed up with a gentleman in his company, and they advised me on everything that I do, not, personal daily finances and, what I buy and don't buy, but what I invest in. I call him first. I don't invest in anything until I talk to them. And, before I sell anything, I talk to them. And they manage my money. They manage my 401k and the different retirement things that I have set up for myself. I wish I had done it when I was 25 because I feel like I would have 3 times what I have now. So I've always said that the quality of your life, the success of your life as a financial success, and even really just regular success, whatever you consider to be success. It could have nothing to do with money, but it's totally dependent on the quality of questions that you ask of yourself and that you ask of other people. I'm glad I asked the right person to marry me because that has made all the difference in my life. There's a lot of things you don't have a choice in, but most of the things in life you do have a choice, and you've got to make sure that you're asking the right questions. Is that a part of communication? It sure is. I'll be back in just one minute. Okay, I am back. I am more than happy to counsel with anybody that wants to talk to me about financial planning, about making good decisions when it comes to their car life, because, it can really screw up your life if you get too far in debt, if you make bad decisions. The time to talk about this stuff, to communicate with the right people, is before you pull the trigger, before you jump in. I always encourage people to go car shopping, test drive cars, get prices, get the trade value for your trade-in, hit the 4 targets, and then go home and think about it. Too many people don't do that. It's just that sense of urgency. But you've got to control that emotional side of you because nobody else can. And, just don't pull the trigger too soon. Can you shop too much? Yeah, you can. It gets to the point where it gets ridiculous and you start, trying to save 100 here or 150 there. Find a dealer that's going to take care of you before and after the sale. And then do business with them on a regular basis. Go back for all of your service work, even after you run out of warranty. Get to know the people that work in the dealership in the sales and service department. You develop those relationships, it makes your next purchase so much easier. They don't want to take advantage of you because they want you to come back. They want you to be a regular customer of theirs. I can't tell you how much more valuable a regular customer is, and having those long-term relationships. Some of my best friends that I have now started as customers, and the relationship has grown to where it is today, and I'm very thankful for that. But give me a call if you need anything, 423-552-2020, or send me an email to LennyLawson2020@gmail.com, and I'll see you next time.